Well, thank all of you for taking some time out of your day to spend with us this afternoon. I hope you have found the workshop so far, if you've been participating, worthwhile and engaging. I think it's really important that we continue to stress the role of entrepreneurship in our community. My name is James Grunke, and I'm the CEO of the Missoula Economic Partnership. And we are the local economic development agency for our community. And we do a variety of things, but we're predominantly focused on three areas. What are we doing to help existing businesses grow and expand? How are we attracting new companies into our area? And what are we doing to have a robust startup community? And one of the ways that we work in the startup community is we created our own angel investment network called the MEP Angel Network. And what we're trying to do through our network is bring equity capital funding to startups in our community. And we really work on both sides. We work to attract high net worth investors, and the way we do that is by having good deals. And then we try to attract good deals by having good investors. And that's what we do, and we really kind of put it together. So we don't actually get part of the deal. Think of us as kind of eHarmony for money. We're just trying to put it together. Moneymatch.com. Or maybe it's Tinder, because we actually want something to happen, right? I've heard about it. Probably good. So, you know, our original topic today was going to be how do you pitch a deal? And it became a little complicated because we were going to actually have some companies actually do a pitch in front of real angels so you could see what it's like. The difficulty is when you're doing with this, they have to be only in front of accredited investors. And we would have had to certify that everybody had been here. So really, we thought the conversation today really is going to focus around what kind of financing do you need and how do you get it? And I think most people believe there's kind of two ways that you get money. The first is you go to the bank. You go to the bank, you say, hello, this is what I want to do. Can I have a loan? They say no, and you leave and you say, there's no capital here. Or you say, I need investment in my company, and this would be a very typical way people do it. I need $100,000 so I can grow my company, and I'm willing to give up, I don't know, and it's normally a number that's just picked out of the air, 10% in exchange for $100,000. Well, actually, there has to be a little more value on what your $100,000 is. So the $100,000 at 10% of the company means you're saying your company's worth $1 million. And it probably really isn't. So again, you'd say, I couldn't get a bank loan, I couldn't get equity capital, and there's no capital in Montana. And I think we heard yesterday, if you were at luncheon, if you're a good deal, capital will find you. There is more capital looking for a home than you could ever imagine. So I don't think it's a lack of access to capital. I think it's a lack of preparation for capital. And that's what this panel today is going to be about. We also spend a lot of time talking with businesses, at least through the Missoula Economic Partnership, and they're all focused on the capital side. And we say, actually a pretty good source of capital is sales or revenue, customers. That's not a bad way to raise money either. And so instead of trying to capitalize on what's my financing need, but we want to know, what's your customer strategy? How are you going to get them? What is your sales strategy? So again, we're going to talk about that. The other thing that we try to preach to entrepreneurs is you need to tell your story at every opportunity you can. Practice, practice, practice what your elevator pitch is. Tell your story all the time. I also ask oftentimes, what type of companies are investors looking to invest in? companies that make money. That's it. That's what they're looking for. Now, they may have some special interests. Maybe I want to be in technology, or I want to be in food, or whatever it is. Companies that make money. And so when we talk to an entrepreneur, for you entrepreneurs, I apologize, but they want to tell me on and on and on and on and on about their product. And yeah, I kind of want to know, but not really. We want to know because what are people really investing in? People. You. Do I believe that you can do it? Do you have the right team? How are you going to get your customers? We said, not just customer 1, but customer number 50 and customer number 500. I thought that was really interesting when John spoke yesterday about their business model, that they had 90+% of the market of Virginia captured, but nowhere else. So they hadn't thought through those steps. And then the other thing that is a trait of Montanans in particular is there is no group of people that are more willing to help than a Montanan, and no group of people more unwilling to ask for help than a Montanan. Ask for help. Know what you don't know. Everybody wants to help you, but they don't know that. So you can't be afraid to ask. They want to hear from you. And then finally, in order to get money, is you actually have to ask for it. You have to close the sale. That's oftentimes what people also don't do. They don't just ask for the money. And when you're asking for money, you need to know what it is you're asking the money to be used for and why you need it. So today's panel is going to be about what type of funding do you need and how do you get it? And those two types, debt or equity, are probably 2 of 200 different ways that you could raise money or raise capital. And I think we have a great panel of people to kind of talk this through. So they're going to give you kind of some of their ideas, but really we want to have a conversation with you today. My job is only to keep the trains on time and keep us occupied until we can have beer at 4:30, right? So first and foremost, we have Paul Gladen. Paul is the director of the Blackstone Launchpad. I'm sure many of you know Paul already. He is vital to the startup community in our city and in our state. He was one of the founding members of Hellgate Venture Network. He was a former partner for Arthur Anderson. It wasn't Arthur Anderson? Recovering accountant. He also started his own company when he first moved to Missoula, and he's looked at lots of different ways for financing. And he's more on my side of the table where we're talking about with entrepreneurs, how do you prepare? Next we have Molly Bradford. So Molly Bradford, also serial entrepreneur, but she's going to give us a perspective of what is it like as the startup to try to get the money, and actually sometimes to turn down money. Not all money is the right money for you, and remember, whoever's money you take, it comes with them, and that's not always what you want. Not to mean that's how I introduce Kai. So Kai is with Good Work Ventures. Good Work Ventures is a local investment fund, and they're going to talk to you about that. And then finally, we have John Horner from First Interstate Bank, who is also our sponsor today. Thank you, John. And we're all going to start, they're going to start with this same question. What do I need to do to get money from you? Or, Molly, what did I have to do to actually get money? So I don't know who wants to start, but that's the premise. What does it need to look like for us to receive money from you? And maybe, Paul, I'm going to have you start, just kind of frame it in your world, and we'll go through the panel. They're going to give you their thoughts. And again, this is a conversation, not a lecture. And I'm here, if there's not a question, just to think of one.
Thank you, James. So mostly people are not going to get money from me, but there is actually one way to get money from me, which is an illustration of also, or the explanation of it will get to other places to get money. So one of the things we do at the Launchpad, we have something called the 4th Fund. And if you ever go to a class that talks about where do you get money from, the starting point is something called the 3 Fs, which is friends, family, and fools. And friends and family can often be very helpful for getting money to start. But the 4th F fund, we realized that in Montana, the 3 Fs may have about $50 to rub together, and that's probably not going to be enough to get your business started. So we have a small fund of money which we probably provide to students and some alumni to help them get started, and addresses this sort of proof of concept point, which I think in many ways gets to the thing I say most to people when they come into the Launchpad and say, hey, I've got this idea, and they often say 2 things. So I need to write a business plan, and I need to get funding. And my response is usually, well, you sort of don't need to do either of those things yet, because really the starting point is to figure out, do you actually have something that the world wants? So that's really where we focus a lot of our time and attention, is helping the entrepreneurs who have these amazing ideas say, go try generate some evidence that customers want this. Because investors, both kind of equity investors and kind of bankers, to James's point, want to see a return on their money, and they're only going to get that if you can develop a profit, which means you have to have customers. So the starting point is really to understand who is that customer base, and there are a lot of techniques, and I won't go into that. We can cover that in different panels and different workshops about the techniques for sort of customer discovery and product market fit. But those are things you need to sort of do early on. But the reason we created the 4th F fund is because we do recognize that sometimes to help you validate that you have a product or a service or an idea that customers are really interested in, is you need to create some sort of prototype or proof of concept or do some additional research. So we started the 4th F fund, and we've got some funding both through Montech, which is the university's incubator, and through the Missoula Federal Credit Union, which has enabled us to provide some small sums of money to entrepreneurs to go do a little bit of that proof of concept work. So I think it's important for you to, as you start out potentially on that journey of saying, okay, I've got this great idea, I've got this business I want to build, I need funding, is first to say, do you actually have some evidence that the marketplace wants it, and what can you do to really kind of get yourself to a point where those sources of funding, which may even be kind of friends and family. So an example that many of you may be familiar with, George Gaines, who came 3rd in the Business Startup Challenge last year with Chilton Skis. He came and talked to us in the Launchpad kind of a year ago and said, hey, I've got this idea, I want to start my own ski company, but I know nothing about business and I have no money, but my father said he might give me some money if I can sort of demonstrate I've got a decent business plan and a way to go about doing that. So we worked with him to put a financial model that showed this is what you would need to build a prototype. And with a prototype, you can potentially get people to test out your skis and to potentially pre-order so you could fund your first production run. And so we worked with him, and we gave him a little bit of money from the 4th F fund, and we matched it up with the money from his father that enabled him to build his prototype skis, to pitch in the Business Startup Challenge where he won several $1,000s, and more importantly had people in the audience that evening coming up to him saying, I want to order a pair of these skis. So we're now working with him on actually starting to put a Kickstarter campaign, so we can talk a little bit perhaps later on about crowdfunding. But there is a journey that you can go through, but it all starts with, do you have some evidence that the marketplace kind of wants your product? So maybe I'll leave it at that and pass it on to Molly.
Some of you here know my story pretty well on the panel also, so if you feel like there's something that I've done to get money that I'm forgetting, please prompt me. But I own Gatherboard, which locally you might know as MissoulaEvents.net. It's a free online community events platform here in Missoula. And that was initially my business partner, Colin Hickey's, and my first product, along with Missoula Indoor Ads, which are the bathroom ads that you see, the potty ads that you see all over town. There's actually 2 bathroom ad companies. We own Missoula Indoor Ads, which are the single black 8.5 by 11 frames in about 300 high traffic locations around Missoula. So the first way that we got money was from the bathroom ads and figuring out how to monetize MissoulaEvents.net about 10 years ago when online was something skeptical. I left a long-standing, very successful advertising career at the Missoula Independent as their lead ad rep, and a lot of people saying, good luck with that internet thing. So good luck with that internet thing. I started a software company. So first, we had a different product that we were entrepreneurs for that was very local, and we realized that people wanted that product in their community. We got random calls from Hoboken, New Jersey, and Homer, Alaska, and Helena, Montana saying, I want MissoulaEvents.net in my town. And by about the third or fourth call, I looked at Colin and I said, I think we have a product people want. So they kind of told us we wanted the product instead of us telling them. But then we did a little bit more research on that. Luckily, I had income coming in from Missoula indoor ads. So we were able to bootstrap a lot of the software development process for ourselves. Luckily, Colin's brother is a legitimate high-level IT guy, and my brother is a legitimate high-level intellectual property lawyer, so we were also able to get a tremendous amount of legitimate support for free. So that was our friends and family round, I think I'll call it. And there was no equity exchange. There was just love, brotherly love in that one. And actually, the first time either one of them, we requested that they send us an invoice so we could pay them. I think Colin and I both cried that we could actually pay our brothers real money and not keep taking free things from them. So I got things for free. I made my own money from a secondary or an initial product that supplemented something I was turning into a far greater product. I also did an economic gardening round, I'm just remembering, with Bread, the Bitterroot Economic Development District, which I think is sort of phasing out, and maybe some of their services are being assumed by MEP and other things like that. But we were much smaller than most of their economic gardening clients, but I asked for it. I said, look, this is not fair that you have to have $1 million in revenue to be considered. What happens to people like me that have barely have $100,000 in revenue, and I need the same help, and I'm trying to start a software company, and I don't want to relinquish equity. So I was able to I had to fill out a ton of questionnaires that really helped me continue to define what is my market, what is my strategy, what am I spending this money on. But I was able to get an initial $7,500, which at the time is a lot of money, to do a competitive analysis of other calendaring software in the American market and find out who we were up against, what they were offering, what their customer base looked like, how they were marketing themselves, how they were pricing themselves, what their core features were, so that I could do competitive analysis for Gatherboard and where we wanted Gatherboard to go and how we would price it. So that was probably the next round and my kind of official first bit of money. Most recently, we've actually gotten we went back to our banker, who we work with First Security. I'm sorry, it's not First Interstate, and you, Ms. Fed. Case in point, lots of really great banks in town who want to work with small businesses and big businesses. So we work with First Security. We meet with our banker regularly. Because I've had those oh shit moments where I realized I was maybe going to overdraw my account, and also I want to have those like hell yeah moments where I'm ready to start growing. That's where we are now. We needed to bring on more staff to handle the growth that we are projecting and that we were also experiencing. I needed an IT person on staff, a salesperson, and a support person to continue to run my local products and expand my national software product. So I spent about 6 months with the help of SBDC at the Launchpad. Kai and Dawn actually quizzed me a lot on stuff I considered doing alone or some equity work with GoodWorks Ventures, a lot. James's team at MEP, I asked for it. I went to every single free resource I could find, and I asked for help because I didn't have all the answers. And I figured out that really I probably needed somewhere between $40,000 and $80,000. And I didn't want to go through evaluation, and I didn't want to give that up. And so I went back to my bank, Well, now we'd been in business for 9 years. The software company had been in business for 3 years. It's been profitable since the beginning. We have good growth. Our indoor ads continue to have good growth. Our online ads of the local calendars we own. So we just did 2 different $40,000 loans. One's a business revolving line of credit. We actually haven't used it at all. And the other one's term, but we had 9 months interest only. So we did all these like really great things. And then the third thing that I hope happens, fingers crossed, I just did a lot of work with Nicole on James's team at MEP and Jenny to put together a bid for the Big Sky Economic Development Trust Fund, which will, if we get it, will help us create 4 jobs in 2017 and 4 jobs in 2018, each one with roughly a $7,000 salary and jobs creation match to help with equipment and lease space and computers and then also in tandem with that, a workforce training grant that would come through that. I'm sorry if I'm not remembering all the names correctly. So I hope that happens too, because that'll help me take my part-time employees and turn them into full-time employees and give me some matching funds in there. I will say the other thing we did one small equity thing. Our programmer has always been in a work-for-hire relationship with us. He has his own company. He's a good friend of my business partner and a solid programmer in town. And the day we were going to ask him if he would give us a cheaper programming rate in exchange for a small bit of equity in Gatherboard, he actually called us and said, I'll give you a cheaper rate for a small, and we were like, okay, done. So we negotiated 5% equity for him, and he would work for $20 an hour. I mean, that was like amazing. And we actually took it much further, and we ended up giving him 10% of the company. So he doesn't own any of MissoulaEvents.net or Missoula Indoor Ads, but we have a 10% profit sharing agreement in Gatherboard, and if we ever split that off into its own LLC, then he will own 10% of it. So I guess we've done a combination of a lot of things. But every time it was more customers, proof of concept, the marketplace wants it.
Hello. Hey.
Do you have a question first?
You were describing your search for capital when you said you went through every free resource you could find. Like, where is that list of free resources?
Oh, well, MEP has a list on their website.
Part of it's on the back of the name tags.
The back of the name tags does also, yeah. So, but the Missoula Economic Partnership, the Montana-Idaho CDC, the Montana-Idaho Community Development Corp., which is actually who we originally went to get the indoor ads going with free business plan coaching, and SBDC, who we've been beneficiary of a ton of free help to do pro forma work and pricing and marketing and other things, and that's in the Launchpad office essentially, right? I mean, it's kind of that whole university. And then I show up. I go to 1 Million Cups, I network, I go to Downtown Association things, I'm here, I go to Hellgate Venture Network, and I'm also our head salesperson, so I ask for money all the time.
And I should just say, so there's a myth in our country that an entrepreneur is supposed to do it all, and that's crazy, right? Who can do it all? You're supposed to know every answer? You don't. All you need to know is we know the resources, or we know where to go, and that's, I think, we want to position the economic development. Now, MEP may not be the one who solves it, but we should know who to solve the problem for you. So, but that's a great question, and now we'll go back to Kai. How do we get money out of you?
That's a really good question. It depends. That's how I like to answer every question. The biggest thing, and Paul touched on it some, and we really refer a lot of people over to Paul if they haven't done the legwork themselves, is hammering out the business plan. Can you? It's not a business plan that's a nice thick stack of papers that have a lot of words on them. It's, can you show me on paper and in spreadsheets in some viable way that you can see a way out of this, from your overburn rate where you're in the hole to, hey, we're starting to become a profitable company and we're sustainable at some level. We look at companies that some of these are trying to raise in Silicon Valley, so they've got a very different trajectory than more of a localized company who is creating goods or services to service the market around here. And so those the funding resources that each company is going to use is very different. We structure everything between, usually early on in the stage, we play with what's called a convertible note. And so that takes this equity conversation out of it. At that stage, your company, nobody really knows what your company's worth because it's not. There's a lot of theory. There's a lot of, well, it's potentially this. But you've proven to us, and we've had conversations, and we know that you need $50,000 or $100,000. And that is where we start. And we say, okay, so we set some limits on what, based on a time frame or on a qualified financing round, that's when we convert from debt to equity. And there's some different negotiated points in there. One of those is the discount, and the other one is really where's that threshold? Is it going to have a maximum valuation of $500,000 or $2.5 million? And it really depends on the amount of traction in sales. The more time with us that you can get down that road and prove more either sales in the pipeline or show really that traction that you have beyond R&D. Like we don't fund R&D processes. It's not what we do. That's a big black hole, and we just that requires funds that is not out there for us. But we do fund sales models and traction and places it can go. And so part of our work that we do is, like Molly mentioned, we sit down a lot with the entrepreneurs and we hammer on that. We really talk through all the different situations, and we pull other people in and look at how we can improve that. If we don't fund you, you should at least walk away better knowing how to execute your business. If we haven't done that, we haven't done our jobs in this community, and it's really a disservice for sitting down with you as an entrepreneur and taking up your time as far as we're concerned. There's a lot of details we can dive into, but if there's a quick question, I'll answer it now, or we can dive into it later after. Yeah.
How important are you looking at profit? And we have up here from investors to bankers. I think that's a very good distinction of what you're looking for in numbers in the different stages they're growing. And you did a great job on the debt convertible note at the beginning. You don't know your value, but as you're going, are you looking for profitable, or are you looking for growth and then reinvestment?
Yeah, so GoodWorks operates as an impact investment fund. We're not a traditional VC fund. We are a family office. And so we're looking at how do we create the most impact in the borders of Montana or in the sustainability space, or in social economics. So we're reaching out across the borders for different deals like that. For us, our focus, we lean 90% on a sustainability of your financial model and not looking at the growth. We're what's considered an evergreen investor. So it's more of in the sense that private equity will buy and hold for an extended period of time. That's how we operate. We're not looking for the 3 to 5 year flip at a 10x. That's not our model. That's not what we're looking for. So we're, in a lot of ways, non-traditional in that sense, and it's fun. We get to do things differently, but other investors will have different questions than we have.
Probably dumb question, but how do you estimate the value of a company or estimate the potential value of a company?
So what we're looking at, we're doing that with really every financing round, because in terms of where we're putting that limit, is where are you going to be 18 months from now, given a certain amount of sales? And what's reasonable? Is it reasonable for the majority of companies that we're financing to have a $10 million limit on their Series A or their seed series? No, they're going to be in the 2 to 5. Plus, it's how do you benefit your early stage investors enough and create value for getting in when it was riskier. I mean, clearly the earlier the capital, the more risky it is. And what happens with a lot of the traditional VC market is your early investors get diluted out, and they really don't get anything at the end. It's your mid-market Series A investors, Series B investors that take the majority of the financing. So how can you, if you really want to build a growth company, it's how can you protect your early investors, knowing that they're going to get diluted down the road. So provide them, a $500,000 cap if you're really early on and you don't have a lot and you know that you're going to get your first couple customers, or reach it out to $1 million. In terms of equity financing rounds, usually we're not leading those. So we don't actually ever lead those in a seed series or a Series A. We're coming to the table with somebody else, and so the majority of that's already hashed out. And we're deciding whether or not it's acceptable to us, and we want to play in that round. So it's, when you start talking about sales transactions, we're working with a company right now where that we're valuing it for a private equity company to acquire. And the paper value, if you run it out using traditional models, is worth about half of what the sales value is. However, there are 2 years of sales revenue goals that have to be hit for that to be carried through. So there's a million ways to run finances. It's that everybody on both sides of the table can agree upon the terms, and that you've seen kind of where this runs out and how it plays out for everybody.
Banking itself is not complicated. The most important thing to remember with banking is we are not investors. And so when you're looking at your banking relationship, the bank's looking for two things, basically. We want to get paid back, and we want interest. So if you always are remembering that, then you're going to remember and you're going to know that profitability and sustainability are extremely important to a lending institution. So if you have an idea and you think I need $25,000 to get this off the ground, you write a business plan, don't go to a bank for the money. It's not going to happen, because that's not what a bank or a lending institution does. If you're 9 years, 5 years into your business, and you've moved it through these levels that we've been talking about, and you're ready to expand or grow, you need a new piece of equipment, or you need to cash flow through a certain situation of receivables, or you need to buy some inventory to move you to the next level, that's where bank comes into play. It's risk reward, basically. Banks are low risk, low reward for themselves. So if you're keeping in mind that the access to capital from a lending institution is probably further down the road in an entrepreneurial relationship than in the beginning, then that's an important distinction to make. It does not mean that you don't keep a bank involved and engaged in the very beginning. And what I mean by that is you want to start establishing that relationship early. You set up your banking account, your checking account, you manage it well. When you have problems or you're going to go overdrawn, you contact your banker, you say, here's the situation. Bankers don't like surprises. You probably have heard that a million times. We don't, because it throws off what we're doing on the backside, and we don't like to be we don't like our feathers ruffled, essentially. So if you maintain that relationship and are always in contact with your banker through that checking account, maybe you set up a small credit card, or you set up the ability to take credit cards, you set up your online banking, and you're using your relationship with the bank in the right way, and they're able to see you grow through the different stages, and that you manage those stages properly, then when the time comes that you need to move to that next level, and you've had the 2-3 years of profitability, the seasoning that you'll hear about, and you're able to manage the ability to pay the bank back with a little bit of interest, that's when you go and talk with the bank. A lot of people say banks won't lend money unless you don't need it. If you're at the point of not needing money from a bank, then don't go to a bank for money. It's pretty simple. But more often than not, what you need money from a bank for is to kind of push you to that next, or to cover that period of time, like a line of credit, that period of time where you don't have the cash, but the cash is going to be coming. And you know it's going to be coming. So you buy your inventory, you sell the product, you're sitting on your receivables, but you still got payroll, you still got the lights to keep on, all those types of things. Your line of credit, access it, receivables come in, pay the line of credit off. Don't use the receivables to move you through the next thing. You pay the line of credit off. That way it doesn't evergreen on you, and then you end up in a different situation. So there's all different levels and access to capital. Keeping your bank involved in the beginning and establishing a relationship with a bank lender is important. And it's important to have that communication from day one so that they know what you're doing, they know what your plan is, they know where you're headed with things. Banks like to work with small businesses. I love to work with small businesses because I learn a lot about what's happening in that world. I may not be able to lend to you right away, but as I grow with you and as I understand your business, it's a lot easier for me to lend to you down the road. I'm not lending to your business, I'm lending to you. And that's an important thing to keep in mind as well. So the relationship developed with your banker is extremely important, even though they may not be able to get you access to money right away. Down the road, when you need it for that next level, we're not looking for a piece of the company. We're not looking for the kitchen sink. We're just looking for our principal back and a little bit of interest. And that's when we come into play on the other things. In the meantime, you work to get the other access, and we'll put you in line with those types of things just as easily. Sit down with your lender and you say, here's what I need. And we'll talk to Montana, Idaho CDC. We'll talk to MEP. We'll get you in touch with people and say, they're not quite ready for bank lending, but they're ready for this type of financing.
Well, and John, you bring up a good point. Would you touch on that a little bit? I think when I dealing with entrepreneurs all the time, I ask them, well, who's your banker? And maybe they'll say First Interstate Bank, and I go, no, who, the name? Well, I don't know. I don't have one. And it's often, you need to have one. You need to develop a relationship, and you need to interview them like you were interviewing somebody on your own team, right? They're going to be with you in the struggles and in the high points and the low. And I mean, I would be very comfortable going to John and saying, here's my business idea. What do I need to look like 3 years from now for you to bank me? And John will tell me.
John, maybe you can talk a little bit about, because I think what you've said and what we've talked about mostly is probably startups where they're dealing with kind of innovative ideas. It's a software business. The model's somewhat uncertain. But we also get quite a few people on the launch pad that have more sort of traditional businesses, kind of coffee shops, bars. So, for example, one of our favorite clients is the Dram Shop. But they came in kind of 2 years ago and said, hey, we've got this idea for a dram shop, essentially a bar. But we helped them with put the financial model together, made introductions to the banks. And I mean, they did get bank loans because there was kind of collateral. Can you maybe just talk a little bit about those instances where some of those more traditional business models can get funding off the bat?
And it goes a lot, one, to, as you mentioned, there is collateral piece to it. Banks really don't want collateral. If you think of collateral, basically it's a hammer more than anything else. All collateral does for a bank is it gives us the position to be able to say, well, if you don't pay us back, we'll take this. We don't want this, because then we have to do something with it. So really what we want is just the money back. But yes, in certain situations, there's way that you can put financing together, but it typically will flow down to that family friend type of thing. So if you come in that situation, I'm going to look more towards what collateral out there do I have. Home equity is typically the first thing that comes into play. So people will mortgage their home to get the money to invest in the business. It's not a bad way. It's just a different way. And it's a different way to get financing at a little less expensive. But there's typically got to be some outside source of revenue, because the bank wants two things. It wants its money back and it wants interest. So you have to show in some way or form the ability to do that. Now, banks will take a little bit of a flyer on the projections that you have if there's a reasonable projection, and if they don't pan out, then there's a backup. We like primary, secondary, tertiary. I mean, we look at it all to find out how we're going to get paid back, because we don't want the collateral. Sometimes collateral secondary. So in weaker ones like that, we may go to Montana, Idaho CDC. We may go to the Small Business Administration, and we get back-end guarantees from the Small Business Administration to help with those types of things. But they have their own rules and things that they're looking for as well. So there are ways to get financing if you're willing to literally put up a house. Or you have some back-end guarantees that are willing to step in and say, I'll take the place of them if it goes bad. So there are ways to do it. You just have to be willing to meet those ways. In some cases, you give up equity. That starts in debt, and you give up equity in the business. Sometimes you don't want to do that, so you bootstrap it. You eat top ramen noodles, and you move through the years. Other times, you look to family and friends. You look to your home. You look to assets you might have outside that you're willing to put up in place of. It's there. You ask the question, come with an idea, come with a solution, and then it's a discussion point at that.
Questions? There must be some. So I think one of the things that Molly demonstrated on all of her phases is she just kept asking people for help. Why don't you talk a little bit about that a little bit further? You just were so passionate that you were right on your idea. idea that you were going to find any resource to make it happen? Or describe your thinking.
That is an excellent question. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from a German immigrant family. We are hard workers. But my dad started a real estate company when he was 20. My mom was 19. They got married. My mom had $3,000. She had 6 siblings. Her dad died when she was 6 years old. I don't know how my mom had $3,000 when she got out from high school. They got married. They bought a duplex. My dad started a real estate company. He ended up putting my 3 brothers and I through college. We didn't even know we were put through college till the day we graduated. We all thought we were graduating with like $80,000, in debt. He's an amazing businessman and entrepreneur. So then I have this one brother in the IP space who's working with businesses. My other brother is an entrepreneur as well. I think part of it is that's how I grew up, right? I was the youngest. I had 2 big brothers. We all were expected to perform at a certain level. And in our family, 8 hours of the day was for family, 8 hours of the day was for work, and 8 hours of the day was for community. I mean, I know that's kind of crazy because when do you sleep and eat? But the fact of the matter was, it was okay to ask for it, but you also give it back. So I'm comfortable asking because I also know I give a lot too. I'll mentor in different situations and donate when I can. And so I grew up that way. It was just like you did the hard work and it was okay to ask. But to ask when you really know what you need and when you need it. So I think that was part of it. It wasn't flippantly asking. Also, I really believe in my product, and I think people believe in me. I've been in town for 18 years. I've been very successful in my other careers. I do what I say I'm going to do. I deliver. So I think there's been some of that also. But some of the asking, too, then I didn't want it. Like Paul knew this summer I was struggling with what we were going to do for money, and we wanted to build out a new website and a demo video and an app and some new features. And so he was trying to introduce me to some potential investors. And that at one point years ago, Dawn and I were talking, and part of the reason I said no to Dawn then was I had just found out I was pregnant with my second child, and I was like, well, I only have one 10X right now. This is a baby, not someone else's money. So I was also really comfortable saying no. I think that's part of it too. I'm really comfortable asking for help because I'm also really comfortable saying, oh, no, thanks. That's not the right help for me. So I said to Paul, how do I know if I want to take this guy's money? And he was like, well, you need to go out for lunch. It's like investor dating. I think that's what you said to me. Would you want to be in business with this person like you are in business with Colin? Would you feel good about that? And actually, I would have felt good about this person, but it just wasn't the right time and good fit. It wasn't what I wanted, wasn't what he wanted. But learned a lot about myself and what I would want. So I think part of asking is sometimes oh, I'm so stymied and confused, I need help, I'm not sure what, and then you find a mentor who kind of walks you through it, and then you find out what you want, and then they can refer you to the right thing. I think part of asking is being real comfortable. When you apply for a job, you don't have to say yes to the job offer, right? So if you apply for money, you don't have to say yes to the money. You have to be comfortable saying no also. And you have to be willing to be vulnerable, a little bit vulnerable about it.
You reminded me of something people often say: you ask for money, you get advice; you ask for advice, you get money. But I think that's a good way to look at it, sort of advice and money at the same time, and having these conversations. So I think if there's one thing to take away from this panel, it's there isn't a single answer here. There isn't a roadmap. There are lots of different options, and different businesses and different stages of business have different options to them. But talking to the different options out there helps you understand kind of what is going to be a good fit and when is that going to be a good fit for you. And that includes, for example, talking to banks kind of way ahead, both to build a relationship, but also, particularly if you're a first-time entrepreneur and you're moving into this world for the first time, bankers know what those numbers should look like. So they're going to be telling you your numbers look ridiculous, so there's no way they don't think you've got much chance, or you've really got your assessment of margins, for example, is just nowhere near what the industry average is. So this is a learning kind of educational process as much as it is getting to that outcome of kind of, okay, somebody's given me the $100,000 that I wanted. So I think really get out there and have those conversations and evaluate your options so that you know, because your business as well may go in a different direction to the one you thought it would. So the funding needs that you have may change, and the funding options that are open to you may change.
Well, and I think that the models change over time too. I can remember Paul and I were having this conversation a week or two ago. When I first started doing some equity investment 15 years ago, every time I saw a subscription model, I just hated it. It's like, oh my God, I hate that. Today, if I saw any business plan that did not have a subscription model, they say, why is there not a subscription model? So you have to understand who your target is and what they think about things, and what a model was 10 years ago is different. And I think the theme that we're trying to keep saying over and over and over is just ask people, help them validate it. I see that our speaker from yesterday, John Hagmeyer, has snuck into our room. He, for those who didn't have the chance to meet him or listen to him yesterday, really started with nothing as a school teacher. He had a business idea, had no really business acumen. He was very successful, grew a very successful company. I mean, I think his theme that he's shared with the community over the last 2 days is kind of an accidental entrepreneur, but also thinking big or thinking bigger. Because of his success, he and his wife now have gone into a position that they can help invest into companies. And so I'd ask you, what does a company look like for you two to get your money? What do you need to see to get your money? And they're looking for Montana investments.
You know, I would tell you what, you know, people have asked, what do we look for? Kaya's answer was, you know, we are all different. So if you take, I'd say, First Interstate to Kaya, to us, we're all looking, in a sense, differently to invest at different points. Just on a side note, Kai and I got on the phone for an hour. He's working with a company in Virginia Beach. He asked if we would connect with him, Matt Mahler and I, my best friend. We did, drove 10 hours back and 5 hours back and forth to Virginia Beach and are mentoring those two people, and it was all connected through the Missoula, starting with the Missoula Chamber to Kaya. And this is no joke, this is the way the world works now, right? And so what we look for, we are looking for a recurring revenue model, or being able to get over to the subscription, the recurring. We want to see recurring model. We're looking for now, and we're open, we're on a spectrum, but what we're really looking for is anywhere between $1 million to 5, 6, 7 in recurring revenue, and you're looking for your it was a great description Kaya did from the debt financing to the Series A. We want to do the Series A. And from that point, and it's just not, we don't want to give somebody money. We also want to give them guidance. We want to give them banking. We have banking relationships that we've built that we can open up for people. All those different things, mentors, that's what we want to bring. So we're looking for people like that and ideas like that. And we're not looking at any specific, like Virginia or New York or nothing. We're looking for just great companies, and as we go around and speak, and I'm sure at some point I'll receive an email from Missoula saying, hey, I think we're ready, would you be interested in looking? And, you know, and so that's how you do that. But that's, you know, we're looking for great people. That's another thing, and not ideas. I mean, I've heard a lot of great ideas, but I've met very few great people in the world, and so we're always looking for great people. That's kind of what we look at. You know, the banking relationships are to me, are just so important. I didn't understand that when I first started, and it's really good. I don't know how lucky you guys know what it's nice to have a panel like this up here to tell you. I didn't get any of this. I didn't have any of this. I didn't have a toolkit on our chamber that I could go up and look at. We didn't have that. I didn't know how important it was that Scott LaFell was my banker. I didn't understand that. And so it's really good. I want you guys to know, you guys are very lucky to have this. But we would be that next, not the evergreen, but we would be, you know, we might do that. Like, let me just say this. Kaya called me and go, John, what do you guys think about throwing, I'll just say, $50,000 into doing something over here or something like that? And I would say, you know, absolutely, you know, that may fit us for just to start building a relationship. So, but our main thing is we're looking for recurring models, or being able to go to recurring models. And anybody that's looking to take between, I would say, $1 million to $10 million in investment capital to go from there to grow your company.
Yes?
I just wanted to say a couple quick things. First of all, thank you for your lunch talk. I went back at my staff meeting today as the CEO of our startup and just led with, I went all in, and when I hired all of you, you went all in, and thanks. We just had sort of an all-in moment today, so thank you for that yesterday. It's not always about asking for money like you're looking for actual dollars in a bank account either. Sometimes it's, James, I'm trying to sell my license in Boise. Your family lives there. Who do you know? Or Billings is the last major city in Montana where we haven't sold a calendar. Who's in economic development in Billings? Like sometimes it's because you just need more customers too, right? I mean, that's money. That's money on the bottom line also. So you have to be smart about what you're asking for. Just to kind of touch over on that. And the final thing I want to say is we have someone from Roanoke, right? Yeah, here. So there's money in Montana. Like Virginia money wants to come to Montana. It's like you can find the money.
Did you have a question there?
I did. I don't know if you have time to answer it. Sure. Is it Kyle? Or for any of you, really? Is it Kyle? Or
Kyle.
Kyle. What is a specific example of a pitch that you've had in the recent past that you can share with us as people who already have a pitch all the time? Obviously, we're out there trying to pitch as much as possible to practice, but can you think of an example that you really liked?
So we don't do as much like pitches per se. I don't, but are you looking for like tools and ways to pitch your business? Is that what you're looking for? So really, how most of them starts are either through an intro via somebody we know, or we meet them at Hellgate Venture Network, or go down the list. It's some sort of personal connection. We get stuff through our website, but it's all really strange people from somewhere else and just super random. They're throwing Hail Marys. So it's through a network at some level, and we sit down and we have a conversation with you, and really it's tell me about your business. And every investor is going to operate differently. We just sit down and have a conversation to learn about you, your business, what your history is, why you're doing this, and really where you want to take it. And it ends up being a series of conversations, a series of email exchanges with information, and it generally takes a while. Like it takes a while because we're not okay with something, and go run these numbers, figure out how you're going to get from point A to point B, or you realize that you need to spend more time working on your revenue model or your sales structure. There's a myriad of reasons why it's going to take a long time, but it's really from our perspective a very conversational. All right, let's learn. It's you're not pitching us on why you're the next $50 million exit, or even $100 million exit. We're coming from a different perspective. So whereas John wants to invest in a round that's between $1 million and $10 million, and that's what he wants to hear. So it's understanding from somebody who's actually had a conversation also with that, or you can always go to most investors' websites and see who their portfolio companies are, or you can go to angel.co or Crunchbase, and if they're larger, and see who their portfolio companies are and really learn, and call one of them up. I mean, try and talk to somebody who's talked to them before and learn a little bit about them and do a little homework to see what type of an investor they are, so you can have a more intelligent conversation around what matters to them.
And we do have an example of how to put a pitch deck together on our website, on MissoulaPartnership.com. But Kai's right. The entire point of a pitch is just to get someone like him to say, I want to learn more, or I want to hear more about what you're doing. That's it. And so, again, it's practicing what's your story over and over. So, boom, that's what it is.
The other good resource, I echo both kind of Kai and James's comments. Guy Kawasaki, who's a serial investor, he has The Art of the Start, The Art of the Pitch, and his 10, 20, 30 video is outstanding. It's like 2.5 minutes long, but it's essentially what he's saying in your pitch. You don't have to be true to this verbatim, but it's essentially 10 slides. And there's some stuff online, if you look it up, it'll take you through the 10 sort of pieces of the story, but it's 10 slides, 20 minutes, and 30-point font. which is probably my favorite piece of it. And if you look at 30-point font on PowerPoint, you realize that's like 2 words. And his point about it really, I mean, he has a great analogy about actually kind of take the age of the oldest person in the room and halve it. So unless you're dealing with 16-year-olds, don't use the 8-point font. But his real point is, by not putting lots and lots of words on your slides, it means you actually know what the heck it is you're supposed to be talking about, because you don't want to read off the slides. So his pitch deck will give you a good structure, but really you should internalize that so that you have the 30-second version, the 3-minute version, the 10-minute version, the 20-minute version if you're doing that kind of formal pitch. But you need to internalize that story to be able to say, what's your value proposition? What's the market? How are you going to make money? What's your secret sauce? What do you need? What's your team? That you have those things kind of in your head and you're quick to be able to, when you sit down and have that conversation, the conversation may not go in the order of the 10-slide pitch deck, but you know what the key points are that you're trying to get across.
Do we have maybe one final question? If not, where's the beer? The panelists will be here for the next hour or so. Hellgate Venture Network is hosting their annual meeting right after this, and so they're all available for individual questions. And at this time, I'm going to turn the microphone back over to John Horner, who is our sponsor for today's event, First Interstate Bank. And thank you, John, and thank you, panelists. I think you provided terrific information.
Yeah, they just asked me to say a few quick words, and I'll be really quick. Thank you all for coming. This was a great couple of days, and we definitely appreciate John coming and his lovely wife, who basically is taking care of him through all of this time. And we've learned that that's extremely important as well. But thank you all. Stick around for the social. If you have questions, just ask. And as John said yesterday, know what you don't know, and don't be afraid to ask the question. So have a good night.